To the Saints Around the World Part 2. Here is the content of the recent English post I uploaded on my Facebook. What I want those reading this to realize is the fact that God, who desires that all people in the world be saved, is showing grace by withholding judgment and waiting during the first 5 years of the 7-year tribulation. To raise witnesses who would realize and testify to this fact in real time, God revealed to me the hexagonal timeline and the decalcomania timeline. These witnesses will, in the future, testify in heaven and in the millennial kingdom to the love of God, who extended grace even by postponing the judgments foretold in the book of Revelation. If you understand what I have shared, you too can become the protagonist of the following scripture. Surely the sovereign Lord does nothing without revealing his plan to his servants the prophets. Amos chapter 37. Now, please read the following scripture carefully and take a close look at the attached images. When you enter the land and plant any kind of fruit tree, regard its fruit as forbidden. For 3 years you are to consider it forbidden, it must not be eaten. In the 4th year all its fruit will be holy, an offering of praise to the Lord. But in the 5th year you may eat its fruit. In this way your harvest will be increased. I am the Lord your God. Leviticus 19:23-25. Think about this carefully. The fruit that ripens in the 1st year and the fruit that ripens in the 5th year are both edible fruit. Then why did God give the seemingly puzzling command that the fruit of the first 3 years be considered unclean and not eaten? Through the perspective of the Israelites 3,500 years ago, waiting 5 years for their fruit, God recorded in Leviticus his patience in waiting out the first 5 years of the 7-year tribulation 3,500 years later in order to bring in a greater harvest of souls. From today's message, we now understand that the Feast of Tabernacles, coming in just 2 months and marking the 5th year, is likely the final moment of God's grace. In other words, the Great Tribulation will begin in earnest from the Feast of Tabernacles 2 months from now. The hexagonal timeline ends each year in October, when the Feast of Tabernacles occurs. Because this 7-year tribulation blueprint depicts that each year's autumn feast is the time when God checks and waits for the harvest. The harvest of Israel's fruit reaches its peak every year at the Feast of Tabernacles. God's redemptive plan has been designed in alignment with this, and its magnificent finale will be completed with the second coming of the King on the Feast of Trumpets, October 2, 2027. If you are able, I would appreciate your engagement and comments in English on the Facebook post. To the Saints Around the World Part 2. The End.